Ruby Parks moved through the golden terrace like a shadow, present but unseen. Her black uniform was always crisp, her smile polite but forgettable, her voice soft enough to blend into the expensive background music. 24 years old, and she had perfected the art of being invisible. That was the job in Beverly Hills fine dining. Serve without being noticed, pour without interrupting, exist without taking up space. But behind those tired brown eyes lived a mind that never stopped working. While she refilled crystal water glasses, she listened. While she cleared plates worth more than her rent, she absorbed. Most guests had no idea that the quiet black woman serving their wine had spent 3 years studying international business at UCLA, or that she spoke fluent Japanese, conversational Mandarin, and could read a corporate balance sheet faster than most executives. Life had other plans for Ruby. Her mother, Helen, got sick during Ruby's junior year, stage 3 breast cancer. The medical bills came like an avalanche, $60,000, then $80,000, then more. Insurance covered some, but not nearly enough. Ruby watched her mother's savings disappear, watched the stress lines deepen around her eyes, and made the only choice she could. She dropped out, traded lecture halls for dining rooms, exchanged dreams of international trade negotiations for mastering the perfect wine pour. Her mother cried when Ruby came home with her first server paycheck. "Baby, you were supposed to be somebody," Helen whispered, holding her daughter's hands. "I am somebody, Mama," Ruby had replied, though her heart was breaking. "I'm your daughter, that's enough." Tonight, the private diamond room was hosting someone important. Ruby could tell by the extra staff, the nervous energy from the manager, and the way security checked IDs 3 times at the door. Victor Kane, 79 years old, founder of Tech Industries, a man who'd built a technology empire from absolutely nothing, starting with a tiny electronics repair shop in San Diego 40 years ago. Now his company was worth billions, employed thousands, and shaped the future of semiconductor manufacturing. Ruby had read about him in business journals back when she still believed her education mattered. Victor wasn't just rich, he was a builder, an innovator who created real opportunities for people. She respected that. But tonight, Victor looked small, frail. He sat at the head of the long table, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he reached for his water glass. His eyes carried the weight of disappointment as they followed his nephew around the room. Derek Kane, 38 years old, acting like an entitled teenager. Ruby hated him instantly. Derek wore his privilege like armor, expensive suit, designer watch, that particular confidence that came from never being told no. He laughed too loud, drank too fast, and treated the servers like furniture you bumped into without apologizing. "To the merger!" Derek shouted, raising his scotch glass so carelessly that amber liquid sloshed onto the white linen tablecloth. Ruby moved in immediately, dabbing the stain with a clean napkin. Derek shifted his elbow without looking, nearly hitting her face. He didn't even know she was there. "The Japanese haven't signed yet, Derek," Victor said quietly, his voice thin with exhaustion. "Mr. Takahashi calls at exactly 9 o'clock. If we miss that call, if he senses any disorganization, this deal dies. Do you understand?" Derek waved his hand dismissively. "Relax, Uncle Vic. Takahashi loves me. I sent him that vintage Rolex collection, didn't I? The 1960s set. We're golden." He leaned back, grinning. "Besides, you're too old to worry about this stuff anymore. That's why I'm taking over as CEO next month. You need to rest, permanent rest." The room went silent. The lawyers sitting around the table suddenly found their plates fascinating. Ruby felt anger rise in her chest like heat. She stepped back into the shadows, gripping her serving tray until her knuckles ached. Everyone knew what was happening. Derek was pushing Victor out, using the board's concerns about the old man's health to stage a takeover. And once he had control, he'd probably run the company into the ground within 5 years. Victor's eyes drifted to a sleek black phone on the side table near the window. It wasn't a regular phone. Ruby recognized it as a secure satellite line, the kind used for sensitive international negotiations. "Is the phone charged?" Victor asked, worry creeping into his voice. It's fine," Derek snapped, standing unsteadily. "I need to use the bathroom. Don't touch my drink." He stumbled out, leaving the heavy doors slightly open behind him. The atmosphere shifted immediately, like the air pressure dropping before a storm. Victor checked his watch, a classic Omega that had probably been with him for decades. 8:58, he whispered. Ruby stayed near the water station, watching. She knew she shouldn't care. She was paid $14 an hour to carry plates, not to worry about billion-dollar deals, but she couldn't help it. The injustice burned. Victor had built something real, something that mattered, and his nephew was about to destroy it because he was too drunk and too arrogant to show up when it counted. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 8:59. Part 2. When crisis calls, the moment arrived with terrible precision. Victor Kane clutched his chest. His face drained of color, turning gray as old newspaper. His hand reached weakly toward his jacket pocket, fingers trembling, searching for something he couldn't quite grasp. "Mr. Kane," one of the lawyers shouted, jumping up so fast his chair toppled backward. Chaos erupted. 7 men in expensive suits suddenly became useless, bumping into each other, shouting over one another, frozen by the kind of emergency that money couldn't solve. "His pills," Victor wheezed, barely able to form words. "My pills," Ruby didn't think. She moved. She rushed forward with a glass of cold water and a clean linen towel. Her hands were steady even as her heart hammered. Years of taking care of her sick mother had taught her how to stay calm when everyone else panicked. "Give him space," Ruby said firmly, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Move back." Now, the lawyers, shocked by her authority, actually obeyed. They stepped back, creating room. Ruby knelt beside Victor, placing the cold towel on the back of his neck and helping him locate the small pill bottle in his inner pocket. She opened it with practiced ease. Child-safe caps were second nature to her now, and tapped out his heart medication. "Breathe, sir," she whispered gently, helping him swallow the pill with careful sips of water. "Slow breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth, that's it." Victor's breathing gradually steadied. Color began returning to his face, though he still looked desperately weak. "The call," Victor gasped, his eyes darting toward the black phone across the room. The call, and right then, as if the universe had perfect timing, a sharp electronic ring cut through the chaos. Ring, ring. It was exactly 9 o'clock. "Someone get Derek," one of the lawyers shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "He's in the bathroom," another yelled back. "I'll go find him." Ring, ring. The phone kept ringing, each tone feeling like a countdown to disaster. Victor grabbed Ruby's wrist with surprising strength, the kind of desperate grip that came from watching your life's work hang by a thread. "Answer it," he pleaded, tears forming in his eyes. "Please, don't let it go to voicemail. If Takahashi gets voicemail, he'll walk away. He doesn't tolerate waiting. Please." Ruby's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. "Sir, I can't, I'm just a server." "Answer it," Victor begged, his voice breaking. "Buy us time. Please." The lawyer stood frozen, too scared to touch the phone without Derek's permission. They had titles and degrees, but when it mattered, they had no courage. Ruby looked at the old man. She saw 50 years of hard work reflected in those desperate eyes. She saw integrity being crushed by incompetence. She saw everything that mattered being destroyed because one spoiled man couldn't be bothered to show up. She stood, smoothed her apron, walked across the plush carpet to that black phone. Her hand hovered over it for just a moment. Then she picked it up and pressed the green button. "Kane Tech Industries," Ruby said, her voice calm and professional despite the storm raging inside her chest. There was a pause, then a rapid stream of words, but not in English. The voice was deep, formal, and speaking Japanese. "Who is this? Where is Victor? I don't have time for secretaries. If Victor doesn't respect me enough to answer personally, this deal is finished." It was Hiroshi Takahashi, CEO of Takahashi International, one of the most powerful technology distributors in Asia. Ruby had read about him during her college years, brilliant, precise, and absolutely unforgiving when it came to business etiquette. Behind her, the lawyers were whispering frantically. What's he saying? Is that Chinese, Japanese? Should we hang up? Wait for Derek. Ruby ignored them. She turned her back to the room, pressed the phone closer to her ear, and did something no one expected. She switched languages. Takahashi-san, Ruby replied in flawless Japanese, her tone respectful but steady. Please forgive me. Mr. Kane is experiencing a medical emergency that just occurred. He personally asked me to take this call to convey his deepest respect for you. Silence on the line. Then curiosity, she could hear it in the shift of his breathing. A medical emergency. Is he seriously ill? And who are you? Takahashi asked, switching to accented English, testing her. Ruby understood the test immediately. In Japanese business culture, if she answered in English now, she would mark herself as inferior, just an assistant. If she stayed in Japanese, she positioned herself as an equal, or at least as someone Victor trusted completely. Ruby continued smoothly in Japanese. My name is Ruby Parks. I am Mr. Kane's trusted advisor for Asian markets. He insists we proceed because he trusts no one else with the details of your agreement, especially regarding the silicon chip distribution rights for the Tokyo market. She was gambling now, using information she'd overheard Derek bragging about earlier while yelling at an assistant. She had no authority to discuss this. She barely understood half of it, but she had to try. Heavy pause. Then from behind her the doors burst open. Derek stumbled back in, his face flushed red, his nose running. Who the hell is on my phone? He bellowed. Victor, still sitting in his chair but breathing easier now, held up a shaking hand to silence Derek. He was watching Ruby's back with sharp, calculating eyes. He understood enough Japanese to know she wasn't just making small talk. On the phone, Takahashi chuckled, a dry, dangerous sound. The Tokyo distribution rights. You are informed. Derek usually ignores such details. He paused. Very well, Miss Parks. I will give you 5 minutes, but if Derek takes this phone, I will hang up immediately. I find him exhausting. Ruby felt a chill run down her spine. She had just been handed the keys to a billion-dollar vehicle, and she didn't even have a driver's license. Understood, Takahashi-san, she said quietly in Japanese. Let us discuss the logistics. Derek marched over, grabbing Ruby's shoulder roughly. Give me that phone right now, you stupid waitress. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Ruby spun around, covering the phone's mouthpiece. Her eyes blazed with an intensity that made Derek actually step back. He said if you speak, he hangs up, Ruby hissed, her voice low and fierce. He knows you're drunk, Derek. He can hear it in the background. Do you want to lose this deal, or do you want to shut your mouth and let me save your inheritance? Part 3. The gamble. Derek froze. His mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water, but no words came out. The lawyers gasped. Nobody talked to Derek Kane like that. Nobody. Let her speak. Victor's voice cut through the tension. It was weak, but it carried absolute authority, the kind that came from building an empire brick by brick. Derek, sit down. That's an order. Derek stood there for a moment longer, his face turning purple with rage and humiliation. But he backed away. He slumped into a chair, glaring at Ruby with pure hatred burning in his eyes. Ruby turned back to the window, looking out at the glittering lights of Los Angeles. She took a deep breath and steadied her voice. For the next 12 minutes, Ruby Parks didn't serve food. She served brilliance. She navigated every complex question Takahashi threw at her, using information she'd absorbed while silently refilling water glasses for the past 4 hours. She pulled from her university studies, trade agreements, logistics, cultural protocol. She bluffed when she had to. She deferred with respect when it was appropriate. She spoke his language, literally and figuratively. The semiconductor quality standards must meet ISO specifications, Takahashi said in Japanese, testing her knowledge. Can Kane-Tech guarantee compliance across all manufacturing facilities? Ruby's mind raced. She remembered Victor mentioning something earlier to one of the lawyers about upgrading their San Diego facility. Takahashi-san, our San Diego facility recently completed ISO 9001 certification, Ruby replied smoothly. Mr. Kane invested $7 million in upgrades specifically to meet your quality requirements. He understands that your reputation depends on excellence and he refuses to compromise that. Another pause. Then something shifted in Takahashi's tone. Approval. 7 million. That is substantial commitment. Derek mentioned 5 million. Ruby felt sweat forming on her forehead. She was walking a tightrope without a net. Mr. Kane believes in doing things right, not just adequately, she said carefully. He respects you too much to cut corners. She could feel Victor's eyes on her back. She didn't know if she was saving the deal or destroying it. All she could do was trust her instincts. The questions continued. Shipping logistics, payment terms, distribution territories. Each answer required her to piece together fragments of conversations she'd overheard, business principles she'd learned years ago, and pure intuition. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only 12 minutes, Takahashi spoke. Very impressive, Miss Parks. I am satisfied. Tell Victor I will sign the preliminary agreement tonight. However, I will be flying to Los Angeles next week for the final signing ceremony. He paused meaningfully. I expect you to be present at that dinner. I want to meet the woman who understands my business better than the apparent heir. Ruby's heart nearly stopped. I will be there, Takahashi-san. Sayonara, Park-san. The line went dead. Ruby slowly lowered the phone. Her hands began to shake now that the adrenaline was fading. She turned around. The entire room was staring at her. 7 men in expensive suits, frozen in disbelief. Derek looked like he was going to be sick. Victor was looking at her as if he was seeing her, truly seeing her for the very first time in his life. He agreed, Ruby whispered, barely able to believe her own words. He's signing tonight. The room exhaled collectively. The lawyers began to clap nervously, unsure what else to do. Derek stood up. His face was twisted with rage, humiliation turning toxic in his veins. He walked over and snatched the phone from Ruby's hand. You lucky little nothing, he spat, his voice dripping with venom. You think this makes you special. You violated company protocol. You impersonated an executive. That's fraud. You're fired. Get out of my sight before I have you arrested. Ruby looked at Victor, hoping he would defend her. Victor opened his mouth to speak, but another coughing fit seized him. He was too weak to fight his nephew right now. The moment of authority had drained him completely. Ruby straightened her back. She reached behind her, untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table next to that black phone. I don't need to be fired, Derek, she said, using his first name without adding sir. I quit, but remember this, you didn't close that deal. I did. She turned and walked out of the diamond room, her head held high, her dignity intact. But as soon as she reached the service hallway and the doors closed behind her, reality crashed over her like a wave. She leaned against the cold wall and slid down to the floor. She buried her face in her hands. She had just saved $1 billion empire, and now she was unemployed with rent due in 3 days. The tears came then, hot and bitter. Not tears of regret, but tears of exhaustion. Tears of a woman who had fought so hard for so long and still couldn't catch a break. A door opened somewhere down the hall. Footsteps approached, heavy, purposeful. Ruby looked up, wiping her eyes quickly. It was Isaiah Brooks, Victor's head of security. Tall, African-American, with kind but serious eyes. He'd been standing silently in the corner of the diamond room all night, and she'd barely noticed him. He knelt down beside her, his expression gentle. Miss Parks, he said quietly, Mr. Kane asked me to tell you something. Ruby sniffed, trying to pull herself together. Tell him I'm sorry I broke protocol. I just couldn't. He said to tell you that you're hired, Isaiah interrupted. Full-time, whatever position you want. He'll fight Derek and the board if he has to. Ruby looked up at him, confused. But Derek fired me. Isaiah smiled, a small, knowing smile. Derek doesn't have that authority, not yet, and after tonight I don't think he ever will. He stood and offered his hand. Come on, let's get you home. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Ruby took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. She felt something she hadn't felt in years, hope. Maybe, just maybe, the invisible woman was about to be seen. Part 4. The Blacklist. 3 days later, Ruby sat on the edge of her worn mattress in her tiny studio apartment in Koreatown, staring at her cracked phone screen. Dear Miss Parks, while your experience is noteworthy, we have decided to pursue other candidates. The 6th rejection in 2 days. Ruby set the phone down with trembling hands. This didn't make sense. She'd applied everywhere, hotels, catering companies, even coffee shops. She was known in the industry as reliable, hardworking, and professional. Normally, she could walk into any restaurant and get hired within hours. But something was terribly wrong. She called her friend Lisa, who managed the front of house at Meridian, one of the best restaurants in downtown Los Angeles. Ruby, Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper when she answered. I can't talk long. Lisa, what's going on? You said you guys were desperate for staff. Why did I get rejected? There was a painful pause. Ruby could hear kitchen noise in the background, then a door closing as Lisa moved somewhere quieter. Did you make an enemy of Derek Kane? Ruby's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? There's a memo going around the hospitality networks, Lisa whispered urgently. Your name is on an industry blacklist. It says you were fired for theft and misconduct involving confidential client information. Ruby, he's destroyed your reputation. Kane Tech is a major corporate client. If any restaurant hires you, they risk losing huge contracts. Nobody will touch you. I'm so sorry. The call ended. Ruby sat there numb. Theft. Misconduct. Derek wasn't satisfied with just firing her. He wanted to make sure she could never work again. She walked to her small window, looking out at the gray buildings and crowded streets. $43 in her bank account. Rent, $1,800 due tomorrow. Her landlord, Mr. Chun, was a decent man, but he had his own bills to pay. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Chun. Ruby, I need to talk to you about rent. Can you come to the office? She closed her eyes. This was it. She was going to lose everything. Meanwhile, across the city in the glass tower of Kane Tech Industries, Derek was celebrating. He sat in his uncle's leather chair. Even though the board hadn't officially made him CEO yet, swirling expensive whiskey and looking down at the city like a king surveying his kingdom. His assistant, Brandon, knocked hesitantly on the doorframe. Sir, we have a situation. I don't have situations, Brandon, Derek said without looking up. I have solutions. What is it? It's the Japanese delegation. Mr. Takahashi's office sent the schedule for next week's signing gala. They specifically requested that Ruby Parks be seated next to him. They listed her as Director of Asian Operations. Derek laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. He thinks the waitress is a director. That's hilarious. Just tell him she's unavailable. Tell him she moved to New York. Tell him she died. I don't care. Brandon shifted nervously. We tried that, sir. Takahashi's assistant called back 10 minutes later. She said if Miss Parks isn't at the dinner to finalize the semiconductor details, Mr. Takahashi will not attend. He said, and I quote, I do not trust Derek Kane to understand the technical aspects of our agreement. Derek's glass slipped from his hand, crashing onto the mahogany desk. Whiskey spread across important documents. The disrespect, Derek hissed. I am Kane Tech. There's more, sir, Brandon added quickly. The stock dropped 3% this morning because rumors leaked that the deal might be unstable. If Takahashi walks away, the merger fails. If the merger fails, the board will vote no confidence on your promotion. Derek's face turned purple. He needed this deal desperately. He'd already borrowed against his future shares to pay off gambling debts in Macau. If the stock crashed, he wasn't just losing the CEO position, he was facing bankruptcy. Find me someone, Derek snarled. Get me a woman who speaks Japanese, someone smart, someone attractive. We'll dress her up, give her glasses, call her Ruby Parks. Takahashi only heard her voice on the phone. He barely saw her in dim restaurant lighting. "We'll fake it." "Sir, that's incredibly risky." "Do it," Derek screamed, slamming his fist on the desk. "Or you're fired too." 2 days later, at 11:30 at night, Ruby was exhausted. She smelled like grease and desperation. Since the fine dining world had closed its doors to her, she'd taken the only job she could find, a cash-under-the-table shift at Tony's 24-hour diner in East LA. No background checks, no questions asked, just endless coffee refills for truck drivers and night shift workers. She was wiping down the counter when the door chimed. The atmosphere shifted immediately. A man walked in wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Ruby's entire year of rent. He was tall, with kind but intense eyes. He looked completely out of place among the tired faces and worn booths. He walked straight to Ruby. "Coffee?" she asked, keeping her head down. "Black, no sugar," he said. Then he added quietly, "Miss Parks." Ruby froze. She slowly looked up. "I think you have the wrong person." The man removed his sunglasses. "My name is Isaiah Brooks. I'm the head of security for Victor Kane. I've spent the last 48 hours looking for you. You're not easy to find, Ruby." Ruby gripped the counter. "Did Derek send you to threaten me?" "Tell him I'm not talking to anyone. I just want to be left alone." "Derek doesn't know I'm here," Isaiah said calmly. He reached into his jacket. Ruby flinched, but he pulled out an envelope. It was thick. "Mr. Kane, Victor Kane wanted you to have this. It's a thank you for what you did that night. He knows Derek blacklisted you. He's working to fix it, but his health isn't good." Ruby looked at the envelope. She knew there was probably $10,000 in there, maybe more, enough to pay rent, enough to start over somewhere else. She picked it up, felt the weight of it. Then she slid it back across the counter. "I don't want his charity," Ruby said, her voice shaking with pride. "I earned my place at that table. Derek treated me like garbage. Taking this money feels like hush money. Tell Victor I hope he recovers. But I'm not for sale." Isaiah looked at her for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "He said you'd do that." "What?" "Victor told me, if she takes the money, just leave. She's a nice person who got lucky. If she refuses the money, bring her to me. She's a fighter." Isaiah stood up. "Grab your coat, Miss Parks. Your shift just ended." "I can't just leave. Tony will fire me." "Tony has already been compensated for the next year," Isaiah said dryly. "The car is outside. The boss wants to see you." Ruby stared at him, her heart pounding. Then she untied her apron for the second time that week and followed him into the night. Part 5. The setup 30 minutes later. Ruby walked through the quiet corridors of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center's VIP wing. Isaiah led her to a private room where Victor Kane lay in a hospital bed, connected to various monitors. He looked smaller, frailer than he had at the restaurant. But when Ruby entered, his eyes opened, sharp and alert. "You look terrible," Victor said, a small smile on his lips. "You don't look so great yourself, Mr. Kane," Ruby shot back, crossing her arms. Victor chuckled, which turned into a cough. "Derek is planning something stupid. He's going to bring a fake you to the Takahashi dinner tomorrow night. Some actress who speaks a little Japanese. He thinks he can fool a man who built an empire on reading people." Ruby's eyes widened. "He's going to destroy the deal." "Exactly," Victor said. He struggled to sit up. "And when Takahashi walks away, Kane-Tech loses everything. Thousands of jobs disappear. My 50 years of work turns to dust." He looked at her intently. "I need you, Ruby." "I'm a waitress, Mr. Kane. I'm not an executive." "You're not a waitress," Victor said firmly. "Isaiah did research on you. Top of your class at UCLA before you had to drop out. You speak 3 languages. You understand international business. I heard you on that phone, Ruby. You have instinct. Derek has a degree but no instinct." Victor pointed to a garment bag hanging on the door. "In that bag is a dress. Tomorrow night there's a gala. I want you to walk in there, not as a server but as my representative. I've drafted legal documents giving you temporary authority to negotiate on my behalf. It's legal and binding. If you walk in there with those papers, you outrank Derek." Ruby felt her heart pounding. Derek will have me thrown out. Let him try, Victor whispered. What do you say? Ruby looked at the garment bag. She looked at her worn-out sneakers. She thought about Derek's face when he called her a stupid waitress. A fire ignited inside her. I'll do it, she said. Victor sank back into his pillows, relieved. Good, get some rest. Tomorrow we fight back. The ballroom at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel was a sea of designer gowns, tuxedos, and champagne. This was the event of the season, the Kane Tech and Takahashi International merger celebration. Derek stood near the entrance, sweating in his expensive suit, checking his watch nervously. Where is she? He hissed to Brandon. The agency sent her. Her name is Candy. She's in the restroom practicing her lines, Brandon whispered. God help us, Derek muttered. Just then the doors opened. Hiroshi Takahashi entered. The Japanese CEO was impeccably dressed, his face serious and observant. He walked directly past the appetizers and approached Derek. Kane-san, Takahashi nodded coldly. Where is Miss Parks? I have questions about the shipping logistics. Hiroshi, good to see you, Derek forced a smile. Ruby is she's running a little late. You know how women are, Takahashi frowned. I do not appreciate waiting. She's here, Brandon signaled frantically. A woman approached from the hallway. She was tall, blonde, wearing a dress that was too tight and too revealing for a business event. She walked with a model's exaggerated stride. Mr. Takahashi, the woman chirped in a terrible American accent. I'm Ruby, so nice to meet you. Takahashi stared at her. He looked at Derek. This is Ruby Parks. Yes. New haircut, Derek lied desperately. Takahashi's expression turned ice cold. Ruby-san, please tell me what we discussed regarding the semiconductor quality standards during our phone conversation. The woman, Candy, froze. She looked at Derek in panic. The quality, it was quality, top quality. Takahashi's face became stone. He turned to Derek. You insult me. This is not the woman I spoke with. This is a child playing dress-up. Hiroshi, listen, Derek began. The deal is finished, Takahashi announced, his voice carrying across the room. The music stopped. Everyone turned to stare. I do not conduct business with liars. Wait. The voice rang out from the grand staircase, clear and commanding. Every head turned. Ruby stood at the top of the stairs. She wore an elegant deep red gown that looked like liquid silk. Her hair was styled in a sophisticated updo. She wore minimal jewelry, just a simple silver pin on her dress bearing the Kane Tech logo. She didn't look like a waitress. She looked like she owned the room. She descended the stairs, her eyes locked on Takahashi. Isaiah Brooks walked 2 steps behind her, a silent guardian. Takahashi-san, Ruby said in flawless Japanese. Please forgive this theater. My colleague Derek thought it would be amusing. But I am here now as promised. Takahashi's expression softened immediately. He recognized the voice. Parks-san, you are late. Only precisely late enough to make a memorable entrance, she smiled. She reached the bottom of the stairs and walked right past Derek, who stood frozen with his mouth open. Security, Derek screamed, finding his voice. Remove this woman. She's trespassing. 2 security guards moved forward, but Isaiah stepped into their path. He didn't move aggressively, but his presence was like a wall. She stays, Isaiah said calmly. I am the CEO, Derek shrieked. I gave an order, Ruby stopped. She reached into her small evening bag and pulled out folded documents. She handed them to the corporate lawyer standing nearby. Read it. Check the seal and signature, Ruby said calmly. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. He scanned the paper, his eyes widening. It's a power of attorney, signed by Victor Kane this morning, notarized and witnessed. It designates Miss Ruby Parks as his legal proxy for all Asian negotiations, effective immediately. The room gasped. Board members whispered frantically. Ruby turned to Derek. She stepped close to him, her voice quiet but fierce. Sit down, Derek, or Isaiah will escort you out for disrupting a shareholder event. Derek looked around desperately. He saw the board members watching him with disgust. He saw Takahashi looking at Ruby with respect. He was beaten. He stepped back, his face pale. Ruby turned to Takahashi. Now, Takahashi-san, about those shipping logistics. I've prepared a revised proposal. Shall we discuss it over dinner? Takahashi offered his arm. It would be my honor, Park-san. As Ruby took his arm and walked into the dining room, she caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror. The scared waitress was gone. But the night was far from over. Derek wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. Part 6. The morning sun poured through the windows of Ruby's hotel suite at the Beverly, Wilshire. She was packing her bag, preparing to head to Kaintech headquarters to sign the final merger documents with Takahashi. She felt invincible, like she had finally found her place in the world. Then came the pounding on the door. Heavy, aggressive, official. LAPD, open the door. Ruby's heart stopped. She walked to the door and opened it slowly. 3 police officers stood there, along with a detective with tired eyes and a worn suit. Ruby Parks, yes, you're under arrest for grand theft. You have the right to remain silent. Ruby laughed nervously, thinking it was a mistake. This is insane. What are you talking about? We received a report from Kaintech Industries security team, the detective said, pulling out handcuffs. The Azure Star, a diamond worth $8 million that was on display at last night's gala, has been reported stolen. Security footage shows you entering the display room. We found the diamond in a safe deposit box registered under your name. That's impossible, Ruby gasped as the cold metal clicked around her wrists. I've never even seen that diamond. I don't have a safe deposit box. Save it for your lawyer, the detective said. They marched her through the hotel lobby. People stared. Cameras flashed. And standing near the revolving doors, holding a coffee cup and wearing a satisfied smirk, was Derek Kane. He watched her perp walk like a predator watching wounded prey. He mouthed one word as she passed. Waitress. The next several hours were a nightmare. Ruby was processed, fingerprinted, thrown into a holding cell at the West LA station. Her phone was confiscated. She had no way to contact Isaiah or Victor. Derek had played his move perfectly. In the interrogation room, the detective threw a file on the table. We have security footage, Miss Parks. We have the diamond in a box registered with your social security number. The box was opened at 4 o'clock this morning using a key we found in your hotel room. I never had a key, Ruby shouted, tears streaming down her face. Derek Kane is framing me. He has access to security systems. He could have planted everything. Derek Kane is a respected businessman, the detective sighed. You're a desperate woman with barely any money and massive debt. Who's a jury going to believe? The door opened. Derek walked in looking immaculate. Detective, may I have a moment with Miss Parks? I'd like to see if we can resolve this privately. For my uncle's sake. The detective hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. The door closed. Derek sat across from Ruby, leaning back in his chair like he was lounging at a country club. I told you, Derek whispered. You don't belong in our world. You thought wearing a nice dress made you one of us. Power isn't about clothes, Ruby. Power is about control, and I control everything. Victor will know the truth, Ruby said, her voice shaking. Victor is in a medically induced coma, Derek lied smoothly. The stress of the gala was too much for his heart. He collapsed this morning. With him incapacitated and you arrested, the board just voted me CEO. My first act. Pressing charges against you and firing you. Ruby felt the world spinning. Victor was gone. She had no allies, no money for a lawyer. Here's the deal, Derek said, sliding a paper across the table. Sign this confession. Admit you stole the diamond. In exchange, I'll reduce the charges to a misdemeanor. You get probation, no jail time, but you leave Lowe's Angels. You never speak the Kane name again. And if I don't, 20 years in prison, Derek smiled. And I'll make sure everyone knows you as the thief who pretended to be important. Ruby stared at the confession letter. Her hand reached for the pen, hovering over the paper. Tick-tock, Cinderella, Derek sneered. Suddenly, the door didn't just open. It slammed against the wall with such force that Derek jumped from his chair. Isaiah Brooks filled the doorway, but he wasn't wearing his usual suit. He wore tactical gear with a badge hanging around his neck that read, FBI Corporate Crimes Division. "Step away from Miss Parks, Derek," Isaiah commanded, his voice like thunder. "Excuse me," Derek sputtered. "I'm the CEO of Kane Tech. I demand—" "You demand nothing," a sharp female voice interrupted. A woman in a gray power suit walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. "My name is Lauren Hayes. I represent Victor Kane and the actual interests of Kane Tech Industries." "Victor is unconscious," Derek shouted, looking at the detective for support. "That was a lie," Lauren said calmly. "Victor has been awake since 4 a.m. Right around when you accessed the security system to plant evidence." Derek's face went white. That's fabricated." The rhythmic hum of an electric wheelchair came from the hallway. Slowly, Victor Kane rolled into the interrogation room. He looked pale with oxygen tubes under his nose, but his eyes were clear, alert, and burning with quiet fury. Derek stumbled backward, hitting the wall. "Uncle Vic, the doctor said. The doctor said I needed rest," Victor rasped. "They didn't say I was dead. I've been awake since you decided to access the vault system, Derek." Victor tapped a tablet on his wheelchair. A projection appeared on the wall, showing complex security logs and financial records. "Recognize this IP address, Derek?" Victor asked softly. "It traces back to your personal computer, the one you used to access company systems remotely. The same computer that created a fake safe deposit box registration in Ruby's name. The same computer that altered security timestamps to make it look like Ruby entered the diamond display room." The room went silent except for Derek's heavy breathing. You're senile," Derek stammered. "You don't know what you're reading." "I might be old," Victor said, "but I built this company on precision. 3 years ago, I noticed you were using company resources for personal gain, small amounts at first. So I created a trap. I had our security team install hidden audit protocols that tracked every access to sensitive systems. I gave you enough rope, Derek, and you hanged yourself." Victor nodded to the detective. "We have everything. The fake registration, the altered timestamps, the email to a private investigator asking him to plant evidence, and we have chat logs where Derek explicitly discussed framing Miss Parks." The detective stepped forward, pulling out handcuffs. "Derek Kane, you're under arrest for theft, evidence tampering, fraud, and conspiracy." "No!" Derek screamed as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. He thrashed and struggled as they pulled him toward the door, his expensive suit wrinkling, his carefully styled hair falling into his face. As he passed Ruby, he lunged at her, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. "You're nothing," he spat, saliva flying. "You're just a servant. You'll always be nothing." Ruby stood up slowly. She didn't flinch. She didn't back away. She looked him straight in the eyes, her voice calm and steady. "I served the company," she said quietly. "You only served yourself. That's why you lost." The door slammed shut behind him, cutting off his screams. Part 7. The room fell into heavy silence. Lauren Hayes immediately removed Ruby's handcuffs. "My apologies, Miss Parks," Lauren said professionally. "We had to let the arrest proceed to ensure all evidence was admissible in court. We needed Derek to incriminate himself completely." Ruby rubbed her wrists, looking at Victor. "You used me as bait." "I did," Victor admitted, and he didn't try to hide it. "I knew he would come after you. You were the one variable he couldn't control. I needed him to make a move so reckless, so desperate, that even his expensive lawyers couldn't save him. I'm sorry, Ruby, truly sorry." Ruby took a deep breath. She looked at the confession letter on the table, the one Derek had tried to force her to sign. She picked it up and slowly tore it in half, then in half again. "Did the deal with Takahashi go through?" she asked. Isaiah chuckled, a low rumble. "That's the first thing you ask. You were almost sent to prison and you're worried about the merger." "Did it go through?" Ruby pressed. "Yes," Victor smiled, genuine warmth in his tired eyes. "Takahashi signed everything this morning, but he added one condition. He wants a liaison he can trust, someone who understands both the business and the culture, someone who speaks his language, literally and figuratively." Victor reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. It wasn't a check, it was a contract. I'm retiring, Ruby, for real this time. My heart can't take this anymore. The board has appointed Isaiah as the new CEO. Ruby looked at Isaiah and smiled. Congratulations. You'll be amazing. I know security, Isaiah said, crossing his arms. I know people, but I don't know international markets like you do. I need a partner, a chief operating officer. Ruby's eyes widened. Me. Isaiah, I don't have an MBA. I don't have the pedigree. I didn't even finish college. Victor leaned forward in his wheelchair. Derek had the MBA. He had the pedigree. He had every advantage. And he was a complete failure. Victor pointed to the door where Derek had just been dragged out. You have something he never had and never will have. You have integrity. You have instinct. And you can absorb a 40-page technical contract while serving water. That's not waitress work, Ruby. That's executive leadership. He pushed the contract toward her. Ruby stared at it, her hands trembling slightly. Ruby Parks, Chief Operating Officer, Kane Tech Industries. Base salary, $2 million. Stock options. Full executive authority. Health insurance for you and your family. And a signing bonus that will cover your mother's medical bills. Ruby felt tears well up in her eyes. My mother's bills. Isaiah did thorough research, Victor said gently. We know why you left school. We know what you've been carrying alone. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Isaiah opened the door. The car is waiting. We have a 2 o'clock meeting with Takahashi. He's expecting you. And Ruby, this time you're walking in through the front door. Ruby picked up the contract with shaking hands. She looked at her reflection in the two-way mirror. The fear was gone. The shame was gone. The invisible woman had stepped into the light. Let's go, she said. 3 weeks later, Ruby stood in her new office on the 42nd floor of the Kane Tech building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Los Angeles, the city that had tried to break her but ended up rebuilding her instead. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her mother. I can't believe they approved all my treatments. Ruby, what did you do? Ruby smiled and typed back. I answered a phone call, Mama, that's all. I just answered when it rang. There was a knock on her door. Isaiah poked his head in. Ready for the board meeting, COO Parks. Ready, Ruby said, grabbing her tablet. As she walked down the hallway, she passed a large photograph hanging on the wall. It was Victor Kane from 30 years ago, standing in front of his first small repair shop, young and hungry and full of dreams. Underneath was a quote, "Success isn't about where you start, it's about what you do when opportunity knocks." Ruby paused, reading those words. She thought about that night in the diamond room, the chaos, the phone ringing, the choice to answer or let it go to voicemail. She had answered, and everything changed. Part 8. The legacy. 6 months later, Ruby sat in the boardroom at Kane Tech headquarters, presenting the quarterly earnings report to the board of directors. The Takahashi partnership has exceeded projections by 32%, Ruby said, clicking through the presentation. We've expanded operations into Singapore and South Korea. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high, and we've created 1,800 new jobs this quarter. The board members nodded approvingly. These were the same people who had once looked right through her when she was serving them wine. Now they hung on her every word. After the meeting, Isaiah caught up with her in the hallway. Victor wants to see you, he said quietly. At his house. Ruby drove to Victor's estate in Pacific Palisades that evening. He was in his study, looking stronger than he had in months. The oxygen tubes were gone. Color had returned to his face. Ruby, he smiled warmly, gesturing to a chair. Sit, please. She sat, curious. I got a call today, Victor said, from Hiroshi Takahashi. He wants to nominate you for the International Business Leadership Award. It's one of the most prestigious honors in our industry. Ruby's eyes widened. Victor, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Victor chuckled. You've earned it, but that's not why I asked you here. He pulled out an envelope. This is for you. Ruby opened it. Inside was a check, full tuition for UCLA's Executive MBA program. Victor, you saved my company, Victor said firmly. You saved my legacy. Let me save your dreams. Finish your education, Ruby. Not because you need it, you're already brilliant, but because you deserve it. Because that girl who had to drop out deserves to walk across that stage and get her degree. Tears streamed down Ruby's face. Thank you for everything. Thank you, Victor said softly, for answering the phone. 1 year later, Ruby stood on the stage at UCLA's graduation ceremony, wearing her cap and gown. Her mother sat in the front row, cancer-free and beaming with pride. As Ruby accepted her MBA diploma, she thought about the journey. From invisible waitress to chief operating officer. From $43 in her bank account to financial security. From being dismissed and underestimated to being recognized and respected. But more than that, she thought about Derek. He was serving a 7-year sentence for fraud and embezzlement. The trial had been all over the news. His expensive lawyers couldn't save him from the mountain of evidence Victor had quietly collected over the years. Ruby didn't take pleasure in his downfall. She took pleasure in the fact that justice existed, that integrity mattered, that truth won. After the ceremony, a young black woman approached Ruby nervously. "Miss Parks, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Jasmine. I'm a junior here studying international business. I read about your story in the newspaper. I just wanted to say," she paused, her voice trembling. "I wanted to say thank you. I work 2 jobs to pay for school. Sometimes I feel invisible, but your story reminds me that I matter, that I can make it." Ruby felt her heart swell. She took Jasmine's hands in hers. "You're not invisible, Jasmine," Ruby said firmly. "You're just waiting for your moment, and when it comes, and it will come, you'll be ready. Because you're already doing the hard work that nobody sees. That's what prepares you." Jasmine wiped her eyes and nodded. "Thank you." As the young woman walked away, Ruby's mother appeared beside her. "Baby, I'm so proud of you," Helen whispered, hugging her daughter tightly. "I'm proud of you too, Mama," Ruby said. "You taught me to keep going. Even when it hurt, even when it seemed impossible." Isaiah appeared, dressed in a sharp suit. "Ready, COO Parks. We have a flight to Tokyo tonight. Takahashi wants to discuss the new partnership expansion." Ruby smiled. "Ready?" As they walked toward the parking lot, Ruby paused and looked back at the campus, the place where her dreams had once died and where they had now been reborn. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. For a moment she hesitated. Then she smiled and answered. "Ruby Parks speaking." Because she'd learned something important that night in the Diamond Room. When opportunity calls, you answer. Every single time. The end, sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody sees. Sometimes the person serving you is the one who's about to save you. And sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who changes everything. Ruby's story reminds us that your current position doesn't define your future potential. Character matters more than credentials. Integrity matters more than inheritance. And courage, real courage, is answering the call when everyone expects you to stay silent. So ask yourself, what phone is ringing in your life right now? What opportunity are you afraid to answer? What moment are you waiting for permission to seize? Stop waiting. Answer the call. Your moment is here.